calculated service. The clink of glasses and the low thrum of jazz barely covered Graham Ellis's voice as he hoisted his champagne flute, cheeks flushed with drink and mischief. "To the ones who keep this place humming," he slurred, grinning across the ballroom. "And to the ones who keep our little secrets quiet." His eyes landed on Margaret Hale, radiant in a green silk dress that caught the chandelier light like water. He added, with a wink that hung in the air too long, "Some of us owe more than just bonuses this year." The room laughed, not all at once, not entirely comfortably. Margaret smiled, that gracious practice smile she wore in boardrooms and bridal showers alike, and raised her glass in return. Christopher Hale, standing just behind her shoulder, didn't smile. His hand dipped into his jacket pocket, thumb brushing the edge of his phone. A quick tap voice memo rolling. He didn't know what he was capturing yet, but something had shifted in the air, like the click of a lock turning. Graham's laughter rumbled louder as he slapped Jonathan Pierce on the back. "Hey, John, you're the generous type. Maybe throw in a Porsche next time, huh?" Laughter again, more scattered. Margaret's smile tightened. Jonathan didn't turn his head. Christopher sipped his drink soda water with lime and watched the moment settle into the room like ash. Margaret stepped away, murmuring something about powdering her nose. Christopher didn't follow. He stood still, the way he did during market drops, alert, unreadable, calculating. Terry Shaw sidled up beside him, quiet as always, sipping from a short glass. "Graham's got a mouth like an open drain," he said, not looking at Christopher. "Funny thing, though, pretty sure that Porsche lease came through one of John's subsidiaries. Or maybe I imagined that." Christopher turned slightly. "Did you?" Terry shrugged, lips twitching. "I imagine a lot of things. Keeps the job interesting." Then he was gone, drifting back toward the bar, where the quiet ones watched and remembered. The ballroom had that rented warmth particular to hotel function spaces. Soft carpet, artificial greenery, and the faint smell of reheated meat. Margaret returned, her face composed, cheeks a little pinker. She touched Christopher's arm lightly. "You all right? You look like you saw a ghost." He smiled thinly. "Just tired." She leaned in, brushing her lips near his ear. "Let's not stay too long. Ben's probably out cold by now." Christopher nodded, scanning the room as if seeing it for the first time. The laughter, the clinking cutlery, the too loud music, none of it touched him anymore. He saw only details. The way Jonathan avoided Margaret's gaze too carefully. The way she touched her necklace when Graham spoke. The way Terry never said anything he didn't mean. They left just after 10. Margaret drove, humming along to holiday music, her hand warm on the gear shift. Christopher stared out the window. Snow had started to fall, dusting the roads in soft white. The city lights blurred in the windshield like smudged ink. She talked about the party. Graham's usual antics, how good the crab cakes were this year, how Terry had lost weight. Christopher nodded at the right times. When they pulled into the driveway, the house looked peaceful. A single lamp glowed in the front window, the one they always left on for Ben. Margaret yawned as she unlocked the door. "Long day. You want tea?" "I'm fine," Christopher said. She went upstairs. He watched her go, the sway of her hips, the familiar cadence of her steps. Then he walked into the kitchen, turned on the overhead light, and sat at the counter. He opened his laptop. The screen lit his face coldly. He logged into the shared account first. Nothing unusual, then his own, then hers. Passwords he knew, ones they'd agreed on when they bought the house. He opened the statements, banking, credit cards, brokerage accounts. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, only that he had to see. 2 hours passed. At just past 1 in the morning, he found it. A deposit. Not a paycheck. Not a bonus. A transfer from a holding company he didn't recognize. He clicked through, traced it back. The name on the account was familiar, not overtly Jonathan Pierce's, but linked to a real estate shell Christopher had flagged once in a compliance meeting. The amount was large enough to cover a down payment on a luxury lease, large enough to raise questions. He didn't speak, didn't move for a while. Upstairs, the house creaked as heat cycled through the vents. A child's toy. Ben's little red car sat on the counter beside him, left there during breakfast. Christopher turned it over in his hand, the wheels clicking softly. He opened a new folder on his desktop, labeled it Q4 Anomalies. He uploaded the voice recording. then the bank statement. Then he opened a blank document and began typing a timeline. The ritual steadied him. A method, a rhythm. He'd used it before, during audits, during market volatility, during the night they found out Ben needed surgery. Structure kept the panic out. At 2:15, he stood, stretched, and poured a glass of water. His hands were steady. His heart was not. Margaret stirred when he slipped into bed beside her, murmured something soft, and curled toward him. Her hair smelled like orange blossom and hotel champagne. Christopher stared at the ceiling. He would not ask her. Not yet. Not directly. He needed more than suspicion. He needed proof. And when he had it, he would decide what to do. Not before. Not in anger. Not in fear. In strategy. In precision. In service. Trail of deposits. By morning, the decision had already begun to take shape. Christopher moved through the routines of breakfast with the same even tone he used for quarterly updates. He buttered toast, tied Ben's shoelaces, kissed Margaret's cheek. Her smile came easily, a practiced warmth that had once felt like home. She smelled faintly of the same orange blossom shampoo she always used, the scent now layered with something sharper, something unspoken. Ben waved from the driveway, backpack bouncing against his small frame as he climbed into the school bus. Christopher watched until the vehicle turned the corner, then stepped back inside and locked the door. By 9, he was back in the home office, blinds drawn, the screen already awake. He opened the folder labeled Q4 Anomalies and resumed. The shell company Delmere Holdings, LLC, had a trail, not wide, but visible if you knew where to look. It had wired $75,000 into Margaret's personal account just after the company's annual retreat in September. The memo line was blank. No invoice, no contract. Just a clean, unmarked deposit. He cross-referenced it with her calendar. That same week, she'd blocked out 2 days as client off-site. The location wasn't listed, but the same week, Jonathan Pierce had flown out to Denver for what he'd described in a team meeting as vendor negotiations. Christopher remembered the phrasing because Jonathan had said it with that same self-satisfied smirk he used when implying things he wouldn't say aloud. The pattern continued. Smaller transfers, 3,000 here, 5,000 there, all within days of Margaret's travel, all from similar shells, Delmere, Anson Creek, Birch Lane Strategic, all previously flagged in unrelated internal audits, always tied to discretionary project budgets Jonathan controlled. The architecture was deliberate, but not invisible. Christopher compiled the entries into a spreadsheet: date, amount, source, memo, corresponding calendar event. Then he saved it, exported it to PDF, and dropped it into the folder. He opened her laptop next. She rarely used it, preferred her phone or tablet, but it was still logged into the shared Wi-Fi, and the password hadn't changed. It booted slowly, the screen flickering once before settling. Her desktop was clean. Only a few folders: work, photos, travel. He clicked through cautiously, careful not to disturb file order. In the drafts folder of her email, he found it. The subject line read, Denver Follow-Up. The body was short. Not incriminating, not directly, but suggestive. Jay, thanks again for the weekend. I've been thinking about your offer, and I agree. It's time to be strategic. Let's talk this week about next steps. I can shift the calendar if needed. M. He stared at it for a long time. The timestamp matched the Monday after the September retreat. It had never been sent. He took a screenshot, double-checked that metadata wouldn't be altered by the capture, and saved it to the anomalies folder. Then he opened a blank email and began to type. Not from her account. That would be reckless. From his. Carefully worded, neutral enough to avoid suspicion, but pointed enough to test the waters. Subject: scheduling coordination. Body: Hi Jonathan, Margaret mentioned you two had discussed a potential alignment on the Q4 vendor strategy. I wanted to touch base directly before next week's call. Let me know if you're available for a quick sync. Best, Christopher. He stared at it for a moment, then added, P.S. She said Denver was productive. He clicked send. Then he closed the laptop and went downstairs. The garage was dim, lit only by the flicker of the motion sensor light near the door. Margaret's Porsche sat in its usual place, angled slightly, gleaming even in the half light. He approached it slowly, not out of caution, but ceremony. He opened the driver's side door and sat inside. The smell hit him first. Not unpleasant, not foreign, but not hers either. A hint of cologne, not his. Something piney and expensive, with undertones of smoke. He closed his eyes, inhaled once, then opened the glove compartment. Manual, registration, napkins, and tucked to the side, half slid beneath the leather folder, a hotel key card. Black plastic, no logo, generic. But the backing had a faint imprint. Hearthwood Suites, room 512. Someone had written it in pen and then tried to scribble it out. The ink still bled faintly through the paper sleeve. He didn't touch it, just pulled out his phone and took 2 photographs, one of the card, one of the compartment as he'd found it. Then he slid the door shut. Back inside, he uploaded the photos, labeled them vehicle contents, and added them to the folder. By noon, the bait email had a reply. Hey C, sure, happy to connect. Let's coordinate via Margaret. She's looped into the vendor piece more closely than I am. Denver was great, productive and refreshing. Cheers, Jay. Christopher read it 3 times. The tone was casual, but too casual, overcorrected. Jonathan was rarely that breezy in writing. And the phrase refreshing felt rehearsed, like something from a lifestyle magazine. He flagged the message, moved it to a new subfolder. Responses. Then he stood. He walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood by the window. The lawn outside was brittle, winter dulled. A plastic soccer ball lay half submerged in the frost. Ben had left it there days ago. He stood for a long time, glass in hand, thumb tracing the rim. Then he moved to the study. The door clicked shut behind him. Christopher sat alone at the desk. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator down the hall. He stared at the reply on his screen. That line, Denver was great, productive, and refreshing. Old self-loyal, methodical died when he saw the key card with the scratched-out room number. No more doubt, no more waiting. Only one question now. Not if they pay, but how completely. Something inside broke. But broken things make sharp edges. He opened a new document, created a timeline, more detailed than before, color-coded the deposits, began matching them to travel receipts, email headers, and social media check-ins. Outside, the wind rattled the side gate. He didn't hear it. The husband, the quiet partner, who would have asked politely, waited for a confession, was gone. What remained was colder, sharper, certain. The cafe was tucked away between a dry cleaner and a boutique stationery shop, the kind of place that prided itself on reclaimed wood tables and single-origin espresso. It was quiet, intentionally so, with soft jazz looping through discreet ceiling speakers and the occasional hiss of milk being steamed. Christopher arrived 15 minutes early, as planned, and chose a table at the back near a frosted window. Not isolated, but comfortably private, the kind of table where you could speak plainly without being overheard, but still be seen. He ordered a black coffee and a croissant he wouldn't eat. The envelope he'd brought unmarked on the outside, thick with the weight of ink and implication, sat in the inside pocket of his coat. He didn't take it out yet. Timing mattered. Jonathan arrived 2 minutes late, which for him was practically punctual. He wore a camel overcoat, a navy scarf with an artful knot, and sunglasses he removed just inside the door. Christopher watched as he scanned the room, spotted him, and offered a smile that was all teeth and polish. "Chris," Jonathan said, extending a hand as he approached the table. "Appreciate the short notice. Everything all right?" Christopher stood, shook his hand firm, brief and gestured to the seat opposite. "Thanks for making the time." Jonathan eased into the chair, unwrapping his scarf with deliberate slowness. "Of course. Always happy to connect. I assume this was about the vendor piece Margaret mentioned?" Christopher let the silence stretch just long enough to make the assumption brittle. Then, "Not exactly." He reached into his coat and withdrew the envelope, setting it on the table between them. The flap faced Jonathan. Jonathan glanced at it, then back at Christopher. Smile still in place, but eyes sharpening slightly. "What's this?" "Something I thought you should see, before we talk." Jonathan hesitated, then picked it up and opened it. The first page was a ledger, printout clean, stark, with 3 entries highlighted in yellow. He flipped to the next page. A hotel receipt from Denver, itemized. Then another same hotel, same date range, different room number. Beneath that, a printed screenshot of a bank transfer, the account name redacted except for the initials JP. Christopher sipped his coffee and watched. Jonathan's smile faltered at the edges. He reshuffled the papers, slower now, then set them down and leaned back. "I'm going to assume," he said carefully, "that you're not asking me to explain these as a friend." "I'm not," Christopher replied. A pause. Jonathan reached for the glass of water in front of him, took a slow sip. His voice, when he spoke again, had dropped half an octave. "What do you want, Christopher?" "I want to understand," Christopher said evenly. "Why someone with your resources would use a company vendor route to cover personal expenses. Why my wife's car has a title tied to a discretionary fund I didn't approve. Why she had a second key card to a hotel room booked under your assistant's name." Jonathan's jaw shifted slightly, the only sign of tension. "You've been busy." Christopher tilted his head. "You were sloppy." Jonathan exhaled through his nose, a short, humorless sound. "Look, I don't know what Margaret's told you." "She hasn't told me anything," Christopher said, cutting him off. "That's the problem." Jonathan's eyes flicked toward the envelope again. "All right, let's skip the theater. What's your angle here? You want to make this go away? Want me to cover something? Because if this is about money—" "It's not," Christopher said. "It's about truth and consequences." Jonathan blinked slowly. "You're not recording this, are you?" Christopher didn't answer. Jonathan studied him for a beat, then leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Fine. You want honesty? Margaret and I, yes, we had something. Brief, stupid. But it's over. It was never about you. She said things were strained at home, that you were distant." Christopher's expression didn't shift. "And the car?" "A gesture," Jonathan said too quickly. "She didn't ask. I offered. She didn't want to feel trapped. I thought it might help her stay focused." "On what?" Jonathan hesitated. "Look, Margaret's sharp. She's good with people, good with clients. She knows how to smooth things over when projects hit turbulence. I valued that. Still do." "Enough to expense a Porsche?" Jonathan's nostrils flared. "The fund was discretionary, within bounds. She logged hours. No one questioned it. They will now." The words hung there, bare and heavy. Jonathan's voice hardened. "You realize what happens if this gets out? To her, to me, to the company?" Christopher nodded slowly. "Yes." Jonathan sat back, drumming his fingers once against the table. "You want to hurt her." "I want her to be accountable," Christopher said. "And you?" Jonathan's eyes narrowed. "You're playing with fire, Chris. This doesn't end cleanly. You think exposing this wins you something? Custody? Sympathy? You torture? You scorch your own house?" Christopher's gaze didn't waver. Already scorched. For a moment neither of them spoke. Outside, a delivery van idled by the curb, hazard lights blinking. Inside, the jazz track shifted, a muted trumpet curling through the air. Jonathan broke first. "So what now? You blackmail me? Threaten to go public unless I play ball?" "No threats," Christopher said. "I'm not asking for anything. Just clarity." Jonathan leaned in again, his voice low and urgent. "You don't understand how this works. People like us, we keep things discreet for a reason. There are families involved. My daughter doesn't need this in her world." Christopher's eyes flicked up at that. "Then you should have thought about that before you started underwriting someone else's." Jonathan flinched barely, but enough. His mouth opened, then closed again. He looked down at the envelope, now slightly rumpled at the edges, then back up. "I'll fix the car," he said finally. "Unwind the title. Make it clean. Quietly." Christopher stood. Too late for quiet. Jonathan rose as well, slower. "Then what? You go nuclear?" "I don't need to," Christopher said. "You'll do that yourself. I just had to light the first match." He turned, stepped away from the table. "Chris," Jonathan called after him. He paused, not looking back. Jonathan's voice was tight. "How long have you known?" Christopher said nothing for a moment. Then, over his shoulder, "Long enough to know you'd be sitting here, trying to negotiate with a man you betrayed." He left without waiting for a reply. Outside, the wind had picked up, tugging at the edge of his coat as he walked. He didn't hurry. The cafe door clicked shut behind him, and with it, the last of the warmth. Back at the car, he sat for a moment before turning the ignition. The engine started with a low hum. He checked his phone. No messages. Good. He opened the voice memo app, replayed the conversation. The microphone had picked up more than enough. Not admissible, perhaps, but persuasive. He labeled the file. Pierce, confirmation. Then he slid the phone into the passenger seat, hands resting lightly on the wheel. The trap was set. The pieces were moving. He pulled into traffic without looking back. Room 614. The front desk clerk didn't look up when Christopher walked through the lobby. The embassy suites downtown had that polished anonymity particular to corporate hotels, the scent of citrus disinfectant, the low murmur of water from a decorative fountain, elevators that hushed open with a sound like breath being held. He moved past a group of flight attendants clustered by the fireplace, nodded at no one, and pressed the button for the 6th floor. The keycard felt warm from his pocket. He hadn't touched it since finding it in the Porsche's glove compartment, wedged behind the insurance forms. No label, no hotel branding, just a blank black strip, and the number 614 written in Margaret's handwriting on a torn corner of receipt paper. The elevator opened. The 6th floor was carpeted in a muted geometric pattern, the kind meant to disguise stains and decades of corporate footfall. He walked the length of the corridor, passing ice machines, silent doors, the occasional room service tray. No cameras in the hallway, he'd already checked. Embassy Suites was lax like that, security through obscurity. The card slid in. A green light blinked. The lock clicked. He didn't breathe until the door closed behind him. Room 614 was still. The curtains drawn, the lights dimmed to a soft yellow. It smelled faintly of perfume and hotel-grade coffee. On the desk, a half-full bottle of sparkling water. On the side table, a room service tray with 2 untouched chocolates and a crumpled napkin. The thermostat blinked a steady 72. He didn't touch anything at first, just stood and let the room settle around him. Then he began. The bedside table held a receipt, folded into thirds. He photographed it without unfolding timestamp, room number, last 4 digits of a card. On the desk chair, a monogrammed dress shirt draped carelessly, collar open, cufflinks still threaded through the sleeves. JP stitched in navy thread above the breast pocket. He held his phone steady, took 3 angles. The bathroom was immaculate, save for 2 toothbrushes, one with a faint smudge of rose lipstick near the bristles. He photographed them, then moved to the wardrobe. Inside hung a single navy blazer and a sequined evening wrap. The tag still on the wrap read Neiman Marcus. He didn't need to check sizes. Margaret's taste was always expensive when someone else was paying. On the dresser, a small jewelry box. Inside, a pair of earrings he recognized, gold with tiny emerald studs, a birthday gift from him 2 years ago. He took another photo, then paused. The earrings rested in the velvet like they belonged to someone else now. He closed the box gently. The final touch sat in his pocket. A holiday card. Blank inside, except for 1 line, handwritten in his own sharp print. Some debts aren't financial. He placed it on the pillow, slightly askew, where it would catch the eye first upon re-entry. A breadcrumb, not a threat. Just enough to unnerve. Let them wonder how close he'd been. He wiped the doorknob with his sleeve on the way out. Back home, the house was quiet. Ben was asleep, his small frame curled under a navy blanket, the nightlight casting faint constellations on the ceiling. Christopher stood in the doorway for a moment, watching the slow rise and fall of his son's chest. In the kitchen, he sat at the table and opened his laptop. The folders were already organized. Audio, financial, photos, timeline. He added the new images, labeled them with clean, neutral tags. No adjectives, just facts. From a drawer, he took a sterile swab kit, the kind sold online for peace of mind paternity checks. Not admissible in court, but enough to crack the varnish of doubt. He rinsed Ben's favorite cup, air-dried it, then swabbed the inside gently. The toothbrush, too, just in case. He sealed both samples, labeled them with the code provided by the lab, and scheduled a courier pickup for first thing in the morning. On the screen, the email client blinked. He drafted the message, attached the evidence package's photos, audio, a PDF of the hotel receipts, and scheduled the send time, 7:32 in the evening, 2 days from now. Just as the wine would be poured and the starters cleared, Margaret's parents would be there. So would her firm's HR partner and Jonathan's assistant, under the pretense of a holiday appreciation dinner, all carefully invited, all with roles to play. He closed the laptop. The clock read just past midnight when the knock came. Christopher opened the door to find Terry Shaw standing there, a half-empty bottle of scotch in one hand, his coat unbuttoned against the cold. "You're up," Terry said, stepping inside without waiting. Christopher didn't offer him a glass. Terry poured anyway, splashing amber liquid into a chipped mug from the counter. He took a long sip, then leaned back against the fridge. "I saw you downtown," he said. "Embassy Suites, room 614, yeah?" Christopher didn't answer. Terry swirled the scotch. "Not judging, just wondering if you've thought through what this looks like when it's done." "I have." Terry raised an eyebrow. "Have you, though? I mean, really. You pull this off, sure, Margaret's reputation tanks, Jonathan takes a hit, maybe some legal noise. But you? I'm not hiding behind anything." "No, you're not," Terry said quietly. "That's the part that worries me." Christopher sat, folding his hands. "This isn't revenge." Terry gave a small, humorless laugh. "Come on, I've known you 10 years. You don't do spontaneous. You've planned this with surgical precision. That card on the pillow, that's not clarity, that's theater." Christopher's voice stayed even. "They made a show of it first. I'm just giving them their encore." Terry set the mug down harder than necessary. "You do this. There's no coming back. Not with her, not cleanly, not with your son, not the way it was." "I know." "Then don't," Terry said, sudden and sharp. "Don't press send. Don't stage the dinner. There are other ways." Christopher looked at him. "What would you have me do? Smile through it? Let him keep underwriting her while I pick up the pieces?" Terry didn't answer. Christopher stood, walked to the counter, and opened the drawer again. Inside, the courier envelope waited, sealed, irreversible. "Ben deserves better than a lie." Terry nodded slowly. "And you deserve better than becoming someone you'll hate." "I already have," Christopher said. Terry studied him for a moment longer, then stepped back toward the door. "I won't stop you, but I won't be there either, not for the show. I'm not asking you to be." The door closed with a soft click. Christopher was alone again. He opened the laptop one last time, checked the timers, the attachments, everything in place. No errors, no way to explain it away. The cursor blinked, steady and patient. He didn't hesitate. He closed the lid. Outside, the wind had stilled. In the silence, the house felt weightless. Something inside him had broken. Not with a crack, but with the quiet precision of a bone reset wrong. It would heal, but differently. He turned off the kitchen light and walked upstairs. Dinner proof. The maitre d' greeted them with the same glossy smile he always used, but something in Christopher's return nod made the man blink and step aside more quickly than usual. Christopher had chosen the table himself. Corner booth, half shielded by a sculptural divider of glass and brushed steel, private enough to contain a storm, public enough to ensure it wouldn't go unheard. Margaret arrived 2 minutes later, as she always did, timed for entrance. Her dress was navy, tailored, with a silk scarf knotted loosely at her neck, understated polish. She leaned forward to kiss his cheek, scent of orange blossom and something colder, sharper. "You ordered already?" she asked, settling in. "I waited." She smiled, a touch wary. "You're in one of your moods." Something like that. The waiter came and Margaret ordered their usual A glass of Sancerre, the halibut. Christopher asked for water, just water. When the waiter left, Margaret cocked her head. "You're not drinking?" "Not tonight." The pause stretched. The clink of cutlery from nearby tables filled the space. Margaret's gaze flicked to his hands, folded neatly on the table. "You're tense." "I'm focused." She leaned back, one arm draped along the booth. "Well, this is dramatic." "Isn't it?" Christopher said softly. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What's this about?" He slid a white envelope across the table. She stared at it, then looked back at him. Didn't touch it. "What is this?" "Open it." Margaret hesitated, then slowly broke the seal. Her fingers moved with the same precision she used on ribboned gifts, careful not to tear. She read the top of the document, then again. Her face didn't change immediately. It took a full 5 seconds for her eyes to lift. "This isn't legal." "No," Christopher said. "It's a private service. Peace of mind testing. Not admissible in court, but accurate enough to be clarifying." Margaret's jaw tensed. You took something from Ben? No, a tissue you left in the bin, one of your lipstick prints, and a toothbrush from the guest bathroom. Her voice dropped. You had no right. I had every right, he said, quiet and flat. I've raised him. I've paid for his school, his clothes, his toys. I've told him bedtime stories and picked him up when he scraped his knees. I've earned the right to know. She looked down at the document again, her thumb pressed hard against the edge. You're wrong, she said. This doesn't prove anything. It's not. Christopher reached into his jacket pocket and placed his phone on the table. He tapped once. The voice came through, tinny but unmistakable. Graham Ellis, slurring, laughing. Hell, we all know who really bought that Porsche, don't we? Cheers to Jonathan, man of the hour. A roar of laughter, glasses clinking. The ambient hum of the party underneath it all. Margaret's face drained of color. She tried to speak, but Christopher raised one hand. The audio continued. Someone, Terry, maybe, trying to change the subject. Graham again. Oh, come on. It's not like it's a secret. Man funds his own extracurriculars. Margaret just parks them in the driveway. Then silence. He let it hang. Margaret's hand moved to her wine glass, but she didn't drink. You've been busy, she said. I had time. Her voice sharpened. You don't understand what you're doing. No, he said. You don't. He reached into his pocket again. This time, he pressed a button on his watch. There was no sound. But across the restaurant, a few phones buzzed, then a few more. A chorus of vibrations like a hive waking. Margaret's phone lit up on the table. She stared at it, then slowly turned it over. Her lock screen flashed with notifications, emails, messages, alerts. She picked it up. Her thumb hovered. Who did you send it to? Her voice was tight. Everyone who needed to see. She unlocked the phone. Her eyes moved fast, then faster. Her lips parted, but no sound came. He spoke evenly. Ledger screenshots, draft emails you left on the shared drive, hotel receipts, photographs from the room, audio from the party, and the DNA result. She looked up at him, throat working. You sent this to my family? Yes. HR? Yes. Legal? He nodded. A tremor passed through her fingers. You'll destroy me, she said, voice barely audible. No, Christopher said. You already did that. I'm just illuminating the architecture. Margaret's eyes filled, but no tears fell. She blinked them back with practiced precision. Across the room, Jonathan Pierce entered, trailed by Graham Ellis. They were mid-conversation. Jonathan gesturing, Graham grinning wide. They didn't see Christopher until they were nearly at the table. Ah, the Hales, Graham boomed. Didn't realize you were here. Small world. Christopher stood. Jonathan's smile faltered. Chris, Margaret, hope we're not interrupting. You're just in time, Christopher said. Jonathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Then again, a third time. Margaret didn't move. Graham's expression shifted. What the hell? Jonathan's face went pale. He tapped his screen, opened something. His mouth opened, then closed again. What is this? He said. Where did you... Sit down, Christopher said. Jonathan didn't move. Graham looked between them, frowning. I don't know what this is, but... Christopher turned to him. Graham, remember your toast? The Porsche joke? Graham blinked. It was just a laugh. Sure, Christopher said. You've always enjoyed spectacle. Graham's jaw worked. You recorded that? You made it public. I'm just giving it a wider audience. Jonathan finally sat. Margaret hadn't touched her wine. I don't know what you think you're doing, Jonathan said. This is slander. It's documentation, Christopher said. And I think the term you're looking for is defamation. But I've been careful. No editorializing, just facts. Jonathan's hands trembled slightly as he scrolled. This goes to my board, my wife, my daughter. Christopher's voice cut clean. Your daughter doesn't need to know you were funding someone else's. The color drained from Jonathan's face. Margaret flinched. Graham stood abruptly. I'm not part of this. No, Christopher said. You were just the loudest echo. Graham looked at Jonathan, then Margaret, then back to Christopher. You've lost your mind. Possibly, Christopher said, but I've gained clarity. Graham left without another word. Jonathan looked up, eyes burning. This is war. No, Christopher said. This is disclosure. Margaret spoke then, voice raw. You've humiliated me, in front of everyone. My parents, my colleagues, Ben. I didn't use his name, Christopher said, but you should think carefully about what you say next. She stared at him. You think this makes you noble? No, he said. It makes me precise. Jonathan stood. His phone was still buzzing. He silenced it, shoved it in his pocket. You'll regret this. Maybe, Christopher said, but not tonight. Jonathan turned and walked out. Fast. Margaret stayed seated. She looked smaller now. The scarf had loosened, one end trailing over her shoulder like a flag of surrender. She met his eyes. You planned this? Yes. For how long? Since the night of the party. She swallowed. That was weeks ago. I know. You smiled at me, slept next to me, ate dinner, took Ben to school. He nodded. Every day, you were already doing this? Every smile, Christopher said. Every conversation. I was 3 steps ahead. Margaret's breath caught. You let me believe. I let you continue, because I needed you to feel safe enough to keep going. She stared at him, horror blooming behind her eyes. Why? Because if I'd confronted you then, you'd have lied, again and again, and I needed you to confirm it to yourself. She looked down. Her hands were shaking now. The waiter returned, hovering awkwardly. Is everything all right? No, Christopher said, but the table's yours. The man hesitated, then nodded and stepped back. Christopher stood, buttoned his jacket. Margaret didn't look up. He hesitated for a moment, then reached into his pocket and placed a small object on the table. A red plastic dinosaur, Ben's, left in his coat pocket after school. Margaret's gaze flicked to it. Her lip trembled. I'll be at the house tonight, Christopher said. Tomorrow, the solicitor will be in touch. I've already begun the process. She didn't answer. He turned and walked away. The cold air outside hit like truth. Unforgiving. Bracing. He walked slowly to the car, every step measured. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt emptied, but not uncertain. Calculated service. The envelope arrived 2 days later, hand-delivered by a courier who didn't meet Christopher's eyes. Pale cream stock, legally crisp. Margaret's name printed cleanly across the top left. She hadn't come back to the house after the dinner, not even a call, just the silence of someone whose performance had run out of script. Christopher opened the envelope at the kitchen counter, beside Ben's half-assembled Lego spaceship. The papers inside were expected. Acknowledgement of separation, preliminary arrangements for mediation, and a formal notice of her intent to retain counsel. He ran his fingers along the edge of the page, then folded it shut again. Precise. No flourish, no apology. Upstairs, Ben was humming to himself, unaware. The boy's door was ajar, the thrum of a cartoon theme song leaking into the hallway. Christopher walked up, leaned briefly against the frame. Ben had lined up his dinosaurs in a neat row on the windowsill, each facing outward like sentries. Dad, he said without turning, do lizards get cold? Some do, Christopher replied, but they find warm rocks. Ben nodded, satisfied. Okay. Downstairs, his phone buzzed again. HR escalation email, this time not from his employer, but forwarded from Margaret's. The head of compliance had looped in their legal team, referencing the forwarded screenshots and attachments. The phrasing was careful, pending internal review, allegations raised. But the tone had a current of institutional panic. Appearances mattered, and Margaret's had cracked. Another email followed minutes later. A vehicle finance company requesting verification of continued insurance coverage on a leased luxury vehicle. Christopher didn't reply. He didn't need to. Without Jonathan's support, the payments would begin to stutter, and insurance firms flagged risk quickly when the registered user was no longer the policyholder's spouse. It would begin as a warning letter, then a lien, then a quiet repossession at dawn. He made tea he didn't drink. The house was quiet in a way that wasn't peace, just absence. The absence of accusation, of pretense, of the practice dance they'd both learned to perform in the last year. The silence let things settle, but it also revealed what was missing. Late afternoon light slanted across the floor. He sat on the sofa with his laptop open, reviewing solicitor options. Practical, reputable, family-focused. He bookmarked one, then closed the screen. There was a knock at the front door, not urgent, just 2 measured taps. He opened it to find Terry Shaw standing on the step, hands in pockets, a light jacket zipped halfway. The man gave a nod, eyes flicking past Christopher into the hallway. "Didn't expect to see you," Christopher said. "Didn't expect to come," Terry replied. "But I was driving past. Thought I'd check in." Christopher stepped aside. "Come in." Terry didn't. He stayed on the threshold. "Nah, won't stay. Just wanted to say what you did that night. It was thorough." Christopher met his gaze. "That's one word." Terry exhaled through his nose, almost a laugh. "She looked like someone had pulled the wires out. And Jonathan. Well, I've never seen him leave a room that fast without a check in his hand." Christopher didn't smile. Terry glanced down the drive, then back. "You know they'll talk. Some will say you went too far." "I know. And some will say you didn't go far enough." "I know that too." Terry nodded. "Just don't let the silence make you think you were wrong. You weren't. You were just final." Christopher leaned against the doorframe. "Why does that sound like a warning?" "Because it is," Terry said. "Final things don't come back, even if you want them to." A pause. Then Terry reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "Forgot this came through admin, for you, from the HR team. I think they're covering themselves." Christopher took it, nodded once. "Thanks." Terry turned to go, then stopped. "Ben's a good kid." "He is. Don't let this turn you cold." Christopher said nothing. Terry raised a hand, then walked back to his car. The engine started, and the vehicle pulled away with the quiet efficiency of someone who knew not to linger near endings. Inside, Ben was packing a small backpack. He'd chosen 3 dinosaurs, a book, and a juice box. No prompting. Just the quiet instinct of a child who sensed a shift, even if he couldn't name it. "You ready?" Christopher asked. Ben nodded. "Are we going on a trip?" "Just to your grandparents for a bit. Then we'll come back. Maybe not here, but somewhere with more space. Maybe near the park." Ben zipped the bag, then looked up. "Will Mum come?" Christopher crouched, leveled his eyes. "Not today, but she'll call." Ben seemed to consider that, then slung the bag over his shoulder like a soldier preparing for duty. "Okay." The taxi was already idling at the curb. Christopher locked the front door, keys in one hand, Ben's small fingers in the other. As they stepped down the path, he glanced once at the house. The curtains were still drawn in their bedroom. The porch light was off. No sign of Margaret. She hadn't replied to any of the solicitor's messages. Just silence. He opened the taxi door, helped Ben in, then slid in beside him. The driver, a man in his 60s with a tired face, adjusted the mirror and asked, "Airport?" "No, just the station." The man nodded and pulled away. Ben pressed his face to the window, watching trees blur past. Christopher looked down at his hands. They didn't shake. They hadn't in weeks. Not since the night of the party, when Graham's voice had cracked through the speakers and something inside him had gone still. The revenge hadn't made him feel better. It had made things clear. That was different. It had cost him privacy. The quiet illusion of a family, the soft comfort of unknowing. He reached into his coat pocket and found the second red dinosaur, the twin of the one he'd left on the table. He placed it in Ben's lap. Ben smiled. "He's back." Christopher said nothing. He watched the road ahead. The light was fading, and the sky had the kind of gray that promised nothing. Not rain, not sun, just the honest flatness of a day ending. He didn't look back.